I just spit so much. What's it called? Hi! I'm so glad you're here. This week I'm trying something new, and I'm really excited. I recently went to Joann's for the final time. The time before that I thought was going to be the last, but we kind of made a spur-of-the-moment decision and went in its last 7 days. And while that's a little sad and disappointing, and I have no idea where I'm going to get fun fabric now, I did find some fun things. The one I'm most excited for is the new craft I'm trying this week. It's, weaving on a loom. I didn't go in looking for this. We were just kind of looking around at everything, and it was over by the cutting table, and I asked the employees if somebody had set it there for later, and they said no. So I went ahead and grabbed it. I really like trying new things. I like adding crafts and skills in my imaginary toolbox. Well, it's not imaginary. Yeah, in my toolbox. So when I saw this for 70% off, kind of just followed my impulse and got it. I think I paid $12 for it. It used to be $40, so I figured that that was an okay investment into a new skill and a new hobby. I don't think I've ever used a loom before. I definitely don't think I've used one like this before. We had a really cool art teacher who introduced us to a lot of different arts and crafts, and I've done paper weaving before, but I don't know that I've ever done this kind of weaving. I'm really excited to try it, but I don't know what I'm doing. I haven't looked up a tutorial yet or anything. I did stumble across somebody's page where they were using a loom, and I thought, well, that's odd timing. So I figured today we would kind of put it together, explore the pieces, and just kind of explore how to use it first before diving into a more complicated design or pattern. I don't know how crazy I can get with the pattern. I guess we'll have to find out. The first step was putting this thing together. The parts include 2 notched pieces of wood for the top and bottom parts of the frame, 2 pieces for the sides, and 2 more for the legs to stand it upright. There were also 2 more smooth pieces that I think are supposed to be used within the strings of your tapestry, a comb, and a needle. The instructions honestly weren't super helpful, and the hardware was surprisingly really dirty, but the loom was a pretty straightforward puzzle to put together just by comparing the pieces to the picture on the box. There was one wing bolt that didn't want to hold on, and I thought it might have been stripped, but eventually I kinda got it on and had to settle for a loose easel leg. And I'll admit, it's a lot bigger than I thought it would be, but that's okay because that means the possibilities are just as big. I actually read the instructions before diving in, hold your applause, but my brain got distracted by these little icons that look like sly little faces smirking on top of the loom, and I got completely sidetracked. I did thread my loom according to the instructions, but this would come back to bite me later. The illustration wasn't super helpful with starting the actual weaving process, so it was time to look for a tutorial on YouTube instead. I found a channel called Spruce and Linen, and I am so glad I found them because they had great videos that taught different stitches and patterns. I basically referred to their videos for the rest of this process, so if you'd like to try weaving too, I'll link their channel in the description. I did learn very quickly that my loom was very slippery, especially on my desktop, so I added some hot glue to the bottoms of each leg, and this worked pretty well. I followed the video's twining tutorial to start my piece, and then moved on to a more daunting tutorial: a pattern. I used whatever yarn I already had just to kind of mess around at first. I began with a checkerboard pattern because that seemed easy to follow and understand, and before long, I had actually made visible progress. To further mess about, I followed this false confidence and switched patterns at this point to a krokbragd tutorial, which is to make little flowers in a repeating pattern. This was when I realized that I hadn't actually understood how to read the patterns for this. I had just been following the video's instructions on airplane mode. This resulted in one flower and a mishmash of other patterns. At this point, it was getting pretty late, so I took my 2-inch tall mess of a muckabout off the loom and haphazardly tied the ends together so that it wouldn't fall apart. Well, that was a fun little experiment. I think I have a better idea of what to do now. I also realized that I kind of set myself up for a pretty big test run because I threaded the entire thing, and in my brain I saw all the notches and went, yeah, they all need to be used. They don't all need to be used. I could have just threaded the ones in the middle and made something smaller, but I didn't. And that, folks, is why you always watch the tutorial first. Always watch the tutorial first. I also learned that this yarn is good for tiny little details, but it does take a long time to cover ground. I made this whatever this is. I don't know yet. But knowing now that the thinness of the yarn is a factor, not all of the notches have to be used, and kind of how patterns sort of work, I think I have a better idea of what I can do, and we'll explore that a little more tomorrow. So I'll see you then. Oh! Excellent timing. Hello! It's the next day. I did some running around today and I got some yarn because last night, after messing around with the loom for the first time, after seeing kind of what a loom pattern looks like, I thought I would have the crafter's audacity to try making my own. So this is what I came up with. Is this possible? I don't know. I barely know what I'm doing, but I went ahead and got some yarn to try and make it happen. So that's what I'm gonna do. I've watched a few videos from Spruce and Linen's channel about looming, or wind looming, about weaving on a loom, and they have these wonderful giant weaving needles. The kit I got did come with one, but it's pretty wide and flat, and that's fine, but theirs looked a bit more easy to use. Plus, when I'm doing multiple colors, it might be easier to just have multiple needles. And while I was out shopping, the only ones they had were exactly like this. They didn't have any like they had. And while I would love to support their business, I kind of can't wait for it to come in the mail. So I kind of just DIY'd my own using some chopsticks by carving a hole in the end and sanding down the tips so that it doesn't catch on the yarn. I don't know if this pattern is possible as it is, but I'm gonna try, and I think it's gonna take a while, and because I ran errands, I'm already getting a little bit of a late start, so I'm gonna get to work. And so I dove into the deep end. I also have to note that making the chopstick needles was difficult as I don't have proper wood carving tools, which will hopefully be remedied sometime this summer, and I nearly cut my hand open in the process, so DIYers beware. I began the weaving process by once again threading the entire loom because that's the size I had drawn my pattern for. I was only a couple rows in when my yarn turned on me. I had accidentally looped it around the easel, and then when I tried to fix it, it tangled with the other yarn I had prepared. I put up a good fight, tossing loops around in an attempt to detangle, only to be thwarted once again when it got further caught up, and at one point I thought I was through. But after another embarrassingly long fight, I got the tangles out and kept going. Almost losing my sanity only one other time. Because the craft store had no chunky purple yarn, I had to work with the thinner kind, so I doubled up my threads and ended up doubling up on the squares in the pattern to take up more space.
Hi, editing here. What I mean by taking up space is that if I hadn't doubled up on the sides of the squares, they wouldn't have looked like flowers because they would have been quite flat. So I'm not trying to cut corners by taking up more space. I'm just trying to make sure that my flowers look like this and not like this.
It kind of sort of worked for a little while until I realized I was leaving gaping holes in the tapestry. I then decided to see if I could more freely weave the shapes instead of going row by row, incorporating the purple amidst the green within the same row, which I had been doing because that's how I thought it was done, and then see if I could fill in the green around them until I questioned if the background would then be completely disconnected from the shapes. I decided to try making the background first and then weaving the flowers on top of it. And then I realized I had changed gears so much that the whole thing was a mess. So I started over. I pulled every woven thread out and started from the first 3 rows I had made. I finally decided to just make a simple weave of the background using the chunky green yarn and crochet the violets and leaves separately. Then I'd sew them on after. So that's what I did. I sort of fudged the edges to make it into kind of a point on one end, and then I got one small violet done, the petals for a bigger one done, and sewed them on, embroidering on some smaller details. Okay. For completely restarting this whole project, I think I got a lot done today. I restarted it because it just didn't look right. Like technically, sort of technically, my pattern was working in some ways, but I think because of the yarn I'm using, it didn't look exactly the way I had imagined it, and that was bothering me. So I started over. I think what I've done here though, since I made a tapered end to the tapestry, I think I've made it upside down. Yeah, I definitely made it upside down. So now I have to put the violets and their leaves on upside down. But you know what, it's fine. I'm winging it. I am intuitive crocheting these violet petals and just kind of stitching them on. If I can get this done tomorrow, I will try to follow spruce and linens patterns with some other yarn that I got and maybe on a smaller scale and see how that goes. Because I thought I understood patterns and I think I'm maybe halfway there, but I'm not 100% there. And I don't know what gave me the audacity. No, I do know. I was excited. The excitement gave me the audacity to try and make my own pattern and follow it immediately. But I think it'll still look cool in the end. And I think I'll be able to make something cool with the pattern that I'll try and follow if I have time. So I'll pick this back up tomorrow and I'll see you then. Hello, it's the next day, and I've just finished crocheting a bunch of flower petals, so we're gonna finish up this first tapestry and... Is that a baby? If it's not a baby, then who is it? Okay. And then see if I have time to actually follow a real pattern that somebody who knows what they're doing wrote. So I'm gonna go finish it up. It took some time, but eventually I sewed on all of the violet petals and their leaves individually and embroidered some more details on in the center. I also tied on some tassels to the tapered edge before I cut my tapestry loose, unfortunately without following a tutorial because I got pretty excited and just cut without thinking. I crocheted around a dowel along the top edge and used a chain stitch to make a strap to hang it up. The white ends at the top and bottom were very visible, so I crocheted a strip of the chunky green yarn to cover it up. Before diving into a pattern, I had to fix my loom because that pesky wing bolt came undone again and the leg fell off, but for some reason this time around it screwed on just fine. Now, time to actually follow through with a pattern. I decided to go back to the krokbragd pattern because I love those little flowers, so I got out some yarn I thrifted and I put 17 strings on my loom per the video's instructions. They use a much smaller loom than I am and chunkier yarn, and I knew it would look way different in the end, but the point is to learn the pattern, and learn the pattern I did. All of a sudden, after staring mindlessly at these little blocks without fully understanding how the heck they came together to make flowers, it clicked. Before long, I fell into a rhythm and repeated the pattern by myself, looping back to the beginning to make it longer. Then came the time to learn how to properly tie it off. So I watched to the end of the video as well as a different tutorial only about finishing your tapestry and tucked in all of those loose ends to the back. Then I detached my piece, properly tied off the ends, and added some more tassels for fun. My second woven tapestry is done, so I think it's time for the reveal. Was an interesting experience. There was a pretty big learning curve, a bigger one than I think I was expecting, and the things I made are not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but it was fun, and it was easy enough to do a basic, like, woven stitch to make a very plain piece. Could be used for anything. Playing around with different patterns just to kind of get a feel for what to do was fun, and I think pretty helpful in starting to understand patterns for a loom. Didn't really click until closer to the end there. And even though my pattern for it didn't really work, I almost think it would have. If I had had chunky yarn all the way through, I think it would have made a difference in how it looked. The pattern was still a mess, but I do really like how it turned out. I kind of like how plush and chunky it looks with the crocheted details on top, and it just makes me happy to look at it because wild violets are my favorite. I will admit I didn't know how to finish this. The tassels could at any point in the future, or the immediate future, fall off at any time because they're just kind of tied in there. So I did go in and I took super glue. I probably didn't need to use super glue, but super glue was the most permanent and immediate fix for it, and I just kind of glued the knots so they wouldn't come undone. Just a little dot on each. Well, except for the first dot, which the thing was clogged and I pushed it too hard and a ton of glue came out, but you know, other than that, a little dab will do ya. The back is not pretty, but don't look at the back. We're not looking at the back. The only thing that'll see the back is the wall. I luckily had a dowel from another project to use, but I did have to cover up the ends of the... forget what they're called. The strings that are on the loom that you weave in between. They have a name, but I can't remember what they're called. I couldn't hide the ends, so I crocheted 2 rows with the same green and just stitched it over top just to make it look okay. I don't think I'll brush out the tassels. I thought eventually I might, but I don't think I need to. So the wild violets weren't entirely woven. They were half crocheted, but my little rug thing is entirely woven and it is misshapen. I don't know if you can see it very clearly on the camera, but it tapers in. I was sort of able to follow the pattern. There are mistakes, like I think I read the wrong row here, and I think I messed up the pattern at one point because I think, yeah, I repeated the pattern in a few places. The whole thing has mistakes throughout, but you know what? First real attempt at following the pattern. I know this abomination exists, but first real attempt at following the pattern through to the end. Not bad, not bad. Not great, but not bad. But no, truthfully, I'm proud of it. It's cute. I think this pattern would look even cuter on a smaller loom with a chunkier yarn like in the tutorial. However, I think the only chunky yarn I have is what's left from this. So I'll have to try it out another time. Wouldn't mind trying a smaller loom. Someday I'll try it again, but not anytime soon, because I think I've done enough of it in the past couple of days that now I need a break from it. Even so, I really like what I made, and if you do too, you can let me know by hitting the like button. And if you want to see what I'm doing next and join the channel, hit the subscribe button. And if you want to know when I post, hit the notification bell and YouTube will let you know. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye!